This is Phil. He's the managing director of Quantcast for EMEA and a few other countries. He's been there 5.5 years. In fact, talking about this, we met on Charlotte Street because we were advertising. The idiot decided I was going to be one of the referees for his job, and met this guy over from America who was talking about this thing about Quantcast, and I was quite blown away. Phil was quite blown away because he took the job, and since then, and even before that, because Phil was at Yahoo for 10 years when we first met, Phil and I, Phil, one of the go-to people that I have conversations with about some of the theories that we have about how media planning and buying is changing. So we discuss a lot of stuff and forget most of it and then don't do anything with it afterwards, to be fair. But we've seen quite a lot of change in how my business works and how his business has worked since in that last 5.5 years. So in fact, Quantcast apparently as of yesterday at their annual event, and some of you were here, which was actually quite fascinating. You now have 23 offices and 700 people. Mm-hmm. But when you started, back 5.5 years ago, you were the only person outside of America. So how and why and what did you do from that first day?
It was, prior to that I was in Yahoo for 10 years, and before that I was at Mindshare, Ogilvy and Mather, and then PhD. And when you start something like this, I mean, I was incredibly passionate about Quantcast when I first learned about the methodology and what the founder Conrad Feldman had developed. The engineers learned a lot more about the product and got given a laptop and a phone, and dropped off in Soho. Then what? It was a very, very new technology. Programmatic, automated planning and buying, so to speak, from the very traditional way, was incredibly new. And of course, the first thing you do is get in touch with all my contacts and say, hey, I've started this student job at Quantcast, and they all said, come back when you've built a business and proved it. So really, the thing I realised is that there's, similar to your story, it could have all been doom and gloom. Oh, no one wants to speak to me. No one, I've got this new business. No one really knows what Quantcast is, and it's quite a formidable moment because at Yahoo, you walk in, the lifts work, the computers there, that works, the telephone works. There's absolutely none of that. There is no support functions, and so really, it's just thinking about what output can I do, what input can I do in order to just try and generate work. And literally, because you sit there and you go, there is no work, I have no to-do list, I've got to generate it. And so you've just got to have this sort of determination that you're gonna create work. And literally it's just input and output every single day. What am I going to do over the next week? What am I going to do today? That means when I go home at whatever time it is, I've achieved one or two steps towards taking that business off the ground. And ultimately, it was really, really hard work. But it's just grit, determination, hard work, and output was the top thing. And like you say earlier in the presentation just previous, forget the demons. There are no demons, just output. And really that was just on my own, going around to people, presenting to them, explaining what we do, time and time again to try and build that awareness.
So perhaps talk a bit about, because certainly you and me talked about this back then, is how the hell do you find people to hire who are going to understand what the hell you're talking about, let alone us talking to clients about things that they could be doing, which we still struggle with. When it came up yesterday in your event, there are still people that are, to our minds, still thinking things that are probably the same way that I bought my first digital campaign in 1996. So how did you manage to persuade people to come on the journey, going back to what you were saying, Martin, with Quantcast?
It's really fun. I'll give you a point, and some of you know Matt White will laugh. Matthew White is our UK managing director, and he's been very successful at the moment. But I tried to hire him when I first started, and I did the presentation where I explained what data modelling is and all that sort of stuff. And he looked through it and he walked down and he goes, "Sounds really interesting, Phil. I'll give you a shout." And he walked out and he said he felt sorry for me. And that was the state of where we were at that point, because people didn't understand programmatic. People didn't understand what data modelling is. If I'd have explained it as being developing target audiences, they might have understood it a lot better, and that's the bit where it started to go wrong. But people didn't understand it, and so it was very difficult trying to find people to hire. And really what I started to attract, and this goes for hiring and customers, is either people who were really passionate about what's coming next, or they were into technology. People into technology weren't necessarily I was into the into advertising or running a business, and so it took a while to try and find people. And there's a group of us, Gus, I don't know if you're here, where we found people who were passionate about what's the next thing, what's the next big thing, and who picked up on various types of targeting and understood that there was something a lot more in this. So again, I had to hire a lot of people in order to find it. It was incredibly difficult. But again, it's just trying to explain where the industry is today, what the technology is that we've now got, and where that's going to take us in the future. And in that way, we managed to hire a small group of people, and then eventually it got a snowball effect. And 2.5 years later, Macauley joined.
So you're what, 180 people?
100 in Europe, roughly. In the UK, we'll probably be near 180 people. Europe, near 200 people. And the company's currently 700 people, and it was 80 when I started.
So do you think there's a Quantcast type of person?
I think there is a Quantcast type of person, and because again it's in its early days, it's those people who are willing to who are confident enough or determined enough to go, I'm going to help develop a new market. And you get those people, and some people get through where you find some people who've been really good in their old job in a big company. When they come to a startup mentality, they're actually really bad, because you have to make decisions. You can't rely on the processes that have already been laid out. And so you need people who have the capabilities to make decisions, stand by them, and who are unafraid of failing and learning by failing. And it's those sort of things that have made people in Quantcast successful. And some other people who were successful in big companies just didn't work out, because they were just expecting things to just work. And it's funny how, in the whole of my time at Yahoo, which was like 10 odd years, I saw 1 or 2 people having to leave because he didn't really fit in, if that. In Quantcast in 5 years, it's 10 times that number, because people come in and just expect things to work. No, you've got to make decisions, you've got to be determined, you've got to try and fail.
So one of the things I said up front about this banded around term about digital transformation, and their field business is one of those digital businesses that are transforming things, maybe for the good or bad, which I'm going to come back to on the Q&A, something that Nick said up front. Explain a bit about how you deal with the tension between the fact you're a tech business, but Conrad decided to go into the world of advertising.
So, our company is a very academic, it's a very engineering-led company, whereby the engineers who are deeply mathematicians and computer science and all these different things, or will have, and they studied the advertising planning and buying process when they developed the whole mechanic, and did that for a long time. But actually very good at it, and we had a neurologist and all sorts of people involved in that. But then when you go to market with a product being so thoroughly well planned by all these PhDs, and actually someone will go, oh, I know, I'm going to use that product for this practical application over here. There is the tension. And so from going into a competitive marketplace with lots of different practical applications and people's own interpretations of how you can use a technology can create friction between the engineer who knows it all and actually someone who knows their product and knows their consumer in a slightly different way, wants to apply it in a different way. So it's been lots of back and forth and trying to explain why people want to apply the technology in a particular way. Now, in most cases, the engineers are absolutely spot on. Click-through rate, dwell time, and all those things. They have absolutely zero confidence they're the right metrics to even consider looking at. But there are other applications that actually the engineers, it's taken them a couple of years, particularly when it comes to brand advertising, where they've realised, actually, yeah, now we understand what people are trying to do that, and now we've come out with a new brand of suite of brand products on that. Convincing an engineer is very difficult because they're always right.
Yeah, we had one conversation probably about 2.5 years ago with someone engineer in New York, and we were trying to convince them we wanted to optimise the people that weren't in market right now.
Yes.
She simply couldn't understand it. Simply didn't believe anything I was saying, which was a bit Uni picked up on for several months afterwards. Yeah. You mentioned their brand. Obviously, the reason I got Nick up front is about the idea of short-term, long-term brand. You can't build a brand in thousandths of a second.
Yeah.
Your business optimises in thousandths a second. I think there's about 31.5 million seconds in a year. The IPA, long and short of it, which I mentioned before, talks about short term being a year. So how do you deal with thousandths of a second versus thousands of a second?
And this was the context the engineers, and it was Michael Rechet, the neurologist, that understood it the quickest. And the technology today, it'll pick up on things that happen in seconds or minutes. And like you say, one good example is this was a performance campaign, activation campaign, where and it was selling retail clothes. And Michelle Obama mentioned that she got a jumper from J. Crew, I think it is, on this talk show. The next day, the models had picked up on the fact that if they showed adverts next to any Obama article, the response rate was better. Like straight away, bang. And a couple of days later, it slipped, slowly drifted off. So that's the power of machine learning when you point it towards the right metric. Now, for a brand campaign, you don't want to point it to the sale, because then it's going to start behaving like that. There is some other events that you can point them to that allow them to optimize using this sort of technology. Now, here's one I saw: Prudential pensions in New York not so long ago. And the challenge they have is pensions are on the decline. It's going to be a pension crisis in the US. Less and less people are investing in pensions. And so what we were talking about is how we could drive favorability for pensions and thus Prudential by understanding those life moments that people go through that make them think of financial security or even security, whether it's leaving university, getting a new job, getting married, having children, all these sorts of emotive life stage moments. How can we reach people who are going through these or are about to go through these moments? Well, you just point the machine learning at a different thing, and we can see lots of search terms on the internet. So what we can do is find all those people who are searching for things related to do with those life stages, and then build a model from that. And then you're having the model predict when people are going to go through a life stage. There goes your brand ad. And because you can do it using machine learning across, in the US hundreds of millions of people, or in the UK 40 odd million people, then you can get a meaningful reach for that campaign. Whereas traditionally, trying to find those life stage moves using a traditional planning and buying technique, the reach wouldn't be meaningful, nor would the share of voice, and favorability isn't going to get shifted at all. So you just have to use the machine learning in the right way and point it in the right place in order to benefit larger reach campaigns and increasing the share of voice amongst the right audience. Now, of course, then some people go, let's measure it off click-through, and then it starts optimizing towards teenage boys again. So you've got to understand what your ultimate objective is. I want to reach people through these life stages. They won't click, probably thinking, why is that pension out there? I'm going to try and get married, right? So they're probably not going to click, but the favorability metrics will start to increase. And if you get people at those right moments, of course, with the right creative, with the right canvas and those things, and so the machine learning can pick people up as they're going through these different stages. And the other thing, which Michael Rechet, the guy who was head of modelling in neuroscience at the time, he was saying that also if people are doing lots of different things online and their brain's a little bit scattered, they're less receptive to advertising. But if they're on there doing a singular thing, they're more receptive. So it's things like that models can pick up on as well. That's at that atomic, millisecond level.
So would you think that? Well, my question is that some of the stuff that Martin was talking about in terms of emotional states of people haven't yet been fully linked to some of the machine language and learning, artificial intelligence, businesses like yours.
Well, there you go. That's exactly what he's trying to do.
Okay. I think what I'm going to do is get these two guys back up as well. I think some of these questions are going to be relevant for you two. So do you want to pop up here? Selfishly, I'm going to ask the first couple of questions because I've got things I want to ask, and then we're going to open it up. So some of the stuff that Nick, you've talked about before is about the emotional need to build in the brand. Certainly, Martin, you were talking about, and then how it links. So, sort of the badly worded question is, how important is emotion? Given that we're still a media agency at heart, we're there to spend other people's money to drive their business. How important is emotion in that, and potentially the thought about, given where digital media's come from, which is all about immediate response right now, this second, how that tension should be changed?
Right. Well, I didn't actually define what a brand is. Sorry. And I grew up with a definition which was it's a series of intangible values. We actually grew up talking about emotional values, not just rational values. So I didn't bother people with that. I think they kind of get that. But I think those intangible values, the personality, emotion is quite a fat word, I think. So it's the ideas we have about something, the way we feel and relate to something, the personality of something, I think is massively important in everything we do in our decision making. It's just got to be true, and whether you read System 1 thinking, System 2 thinking, or whatever, or think about it in terms of how the brain works, in other words, or whether you just recognise that Michelle Obama is a good way I decide about whether I want to wear something or not. It's obvious emotion plays a massive role in all our lives, in how we make decisions. So I think it's not the only role for communications. My argument is I hear it discussed less and less as the key role of my discipline, how to build the brand as an emotion, as an idea people live by or respond to. It's in decline, I think. But it's not with people. And I think it's because of the fascination with behaviour, which is the new, very important, very useful, really exciting set of learning about how people behave alongside that. It's just, I think the challenge for us all is how to understand emotional and behavioural and rational thinking all at the same time, and bind them together and glue them back together, not see them as separate things.
Okay.
I'll give a quick thought on that. So, I think in a way I'm a danger to this, because I think what the whole of brand is about creating a strong emotion that people experience, and they create a reality that Apple is the best product or whatever is the best product, and create emotion around that reality. And actually where I'm coming from is a training around the mind to distinguish what's going on in the mind and what your thinking is, that can actually detach you from the very thing that marketeers are aiming to do.
Is that impossible though, isn't it?
Is it impossible? Well, it's possible through better understanding how the mind works to be less grabbed by what marketers are doing. Not to stop feeling, no, but just to notice where it's all coming from. Which means I might not live in the illusion that XYZ brand is amazing.
Illusion. It's very powerful words. I mean, I don't think it's an illusion. It's part of the way I respond and understand and take in information, and I do it across all different lots of areas. What other people do, what I've done in the past, what the product makes, what how good it is, said lots of stuff. But illusion is I think part of the problem. It's not. I genuinely think we're about to enter an era where people think brands are a con. When I talk to youngest people, nephews and nieces, what is a brand? Their essential definition of what a 21st century brand is, it's a con. Now, when VW does stuff like that, they've probably got very good corroborating evidence for having that statement. So I'm not knocking it, but I think we have to understand how emotion is used and how to avoid, unless we want to resign from our career, how to use that and understand that and relate to it without feeling personally that I'm conning people. I don't want to do that. So I think that is the challenge, is how to integrate recognition that people tell stories from a picture or define meaning for Michelle Obama as a quick shorthand, or or desire something because other people do. We've got to understand that and not think. I don't want to do cons. I don't. I didn't spend 30 years trying to con people, as far as I'm concerned.
Can I ask a question about short-termism? Because you've all three picked up on it in different facets, and certainly we get most of our briefs and most of our clients talk about stuff where we spend money and get a relatively short-term effect, either because an FD set a budget for the month, which obviously has no correlation to how people actually behave. So your point about budgeting, Nick, but as a business that exists in digital media, we are being forced into doing stuff that does something right now, immediately, which, as you were saying up front, Nick, that tension between that and longer term bits. Phil, have you seen any change in the way that you deal with agencies and advertisers about them starting to think a bit more out than immediate response?
It's digital measurement is partly to blame for a lot of short-termism. Last ad seen and the attribution method is wholly to blame. And the way you think about it is, last ad seen encourages vendors just like ourselves to try and place an ad as close to the sale as absolutely machine learningly possible, right? And when you send machine learning at something, it's pretty damn accurate at it. It's going to be very, very focused. It doesn't have a mind to get distracted by. It's just going to do it, and very, very quickly. And the closer if you think about that, it's sort of in time. The closer someone gets to purchase, the more likely they are to purchase. So if you put the ad just before they've purchased, they're more than 100% likely to be buying it anyway. So actually the hard work in terms of driving favourability and all those things, and thus things like frequency, should probably be higher amongst an audience during the sort of building the favourability stage. And actually, in the DR stage, the frequency should probably be a little bit lower than the over the brand stage, and that's sort of conventional wisdom. Last ad seen causes the frequency to be the absolute and utter complete opposite. And we are showing a way, way too high a frequency of ads just before someone's going to buy, beyond what is effective. And that's because of this extreme short-term view that people have. I'm only going to recognise you being successful if you've shown people ads within a day, still people doing it within a day of that consumer purchasing. I question how effective that is. Once I've already done the brand search term, they're probably already on the way. So this short-term view, I think, is causing a considerable amount of investment in the industry to be wasted. And actually, we need to just take a little bit of a step back and go, really, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to achieve long-term sustainable growth? Or are we just going to try and play this game of placing an ad in front of someone before they're going to buy anyway? And I think we've got to, as an industry, try and understand long, medium, and short-term objectives, and how we utilise really good machine learning that we now have, and how we apply it to those different objectives. So I think the short-termism is creating a hell of a lot of work, a hell of a lot of pressure in the industry, which it's not really been thought through properly. Click-through rate, click-to-convert, all those things are absolutely to blame for this short-term approach. And it's not lasting. I mean, when we work with people over a considerable amount of time, a year or 2 years, just these short-term metrics, you end up moving into year 2 and they're going, why isn't it getting better?
Yeah.
Well, the pool that you're sucking from to activate sales is getting smaller and smaller because you're just focusing on the short term.
And I find fascinating that that's new news, because I worked in direct marketing. I worked on Audi building Vorsprung Technique, 3 words again, harder words, but with direct marketing. And one of the basic obvious facts was return rates were in decline. And the whole industry carried on was the basic truth. And we started, I think, in our creds at the beginning talking about not just the 5%, but about the 95% that don't respond, which is a slightly different question. But I think by the time we stopped doing those creds 4 or 5 years on from that, I think it had gone down to 2, 3. I don't know what the current response rates in direct marketing is. So it's not new news, this. If you behave like that, it will
It dries
shrink,
up,
It will
yeah.
dry up, and that's what's happening to quickly. It's very hard. I think.
Martin, another take then. So you
Yeah.
dealing with organisations
Yep.
and the whole notion of short-termism.
Yes.
Is that something you're where?
Yeah, I see a lot. I'm fascinated in it because I think it's part of a societal reality that we live within. So I was just thinking, the question that I'm often asked is, well, how are you doing? Are you busy? And obviously the implication is, if you're busy, everything's brilliant, right? And I'm like, well, I'm busy enough, but actually I don't want to be too busy. Why would I want to be too busy?
Yeah.
And so we exist in that world, and I think retail is one of the worst environments for this, because obviously it's all about what sales were made yesterday, and so they'll be marking down based upon what the figures were yesterday, and so rather than having a strategic day to day, they end up totally changing what they're doing that day because of what they found out yesterday. So I think there's a societal issue and an organisational issue that is very prevalent. And I was interested in your terminology, we're being forced to. And so I think that whether an individual or an organisation, it's about standing up for medium and longer term, as well as dealing with short term. And getting clear on who you are and what you'll do and what you won't do going forward. And my other angle on this is I also know that human beings operate most effectively when they have a quiet mind. So when we're short term, we have busy minds, we have noisy minds, we have loads going on, thinking about the immediate thing. I was with a client yesterday, I've been with a number of clients recently who, on their development plan, they want to have more strategic thinking. They want more innovation. And they always come to me totally busy and they don't have time for it. And so the mind works best when and comes up with ideas when it's quiet. So you will all know that, if you're out for a run or in the shower, you'll suddenly have an idea and go, or on holiday you come up with ideas. But actually, shouldn't we be in some way creating our existence within organisations where we can have a quieter mind and not be so short term?
Just chat. Well, I've developed a new planning methodology called chatting. It's radical. You actually talk about what you agree and what you're trying to achieve, and you don't use charts and you just talk to each other. But I think it's amazing. But I think the short term. I did a Sainsbury's thing recently, and I was looking at an audience of something like 250 marketeers in Sainsbury's. Anybody from Sainsbury's know? And it was just a moment I thought, it's funny, so many people so focused on how to grow the business, marketing, how to grow the business, and yet somehow they'd all been terribly busy. There wouldn't be a person in that audience who hadn't worked too hard, hadn't worked weekends, hadn't, retail. And yet they'd missed the most fundamental of shifts in consumer shopping, in interest in value and other, the big play that has killed Tesco, and there's a number of factors in it, not just, everyone had missed. So everyone was so busy in the short term. But I think we should divide the week not into Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, but long days and short days, or something, thinking days and action days, and I think I want to glue it back together. I don't want to sound like we should all sit around. Obviously I've done a bit of work in my time, and I've made an ad in 24 hours. Anybody can do it. I go, it's not hard. It's not hard. It's only processes that get in the way of making an ad in 24 hours. I could probably do it in a nanosecond. Sorry, and show my age. And but I think it's the integration. The other word you ban is strategy, and it's not a complex word. I don't see it. To me, that's just why. I mean, strategy is, everybody in this room should be able to define strategy, and it's what are we trying to achieve, who with, and how. It's not more complicated than that, and everybody can do it. Everybody does do it all the time, and great strategy. I heard Tom Peters say is, can you define those answers precisely? And the best of strategies is at least one of those answers is different to your competitors. Definition of innovation strategy. So it's not. That's it. Do that, and I think they get divided up. They don't get integrated. They're not focused all the time on everything we do, even if it's in nanoseconds. Somewhere on the door is. That's what we're trying to achieve. That's where we're going. Okay, got it? Everyone run. There's lots of running and not enough. That's where we're going. That's why I love Yes We Can. How do you organise a whole country? Yeah, that sounds tough. You define. That's why I love ideas more than brands, actually, because I think they're the epitome of clarity and distillation and tangibility out in the public forum, so they're accountable in a way that management decisions in boardrooms aren't, or charts in a boardroom aren't. And I think they're inspiring by definition. They do try and connect with people and make them want something. So I think they're better tools even than brands, in a funny kind of way. Anyway.
Right, so as I said earlier, today is a bit about just actually having some space to think about some other stuff. So in that space, has anybody got any questions except for Steve?
Mine are too long anyway.
Exactly. David?
It's an interesting one. But do you think that maybe the new measurability of digital media has actually led to an irony where it has, to your point, resulted in the new 50% of advertising money being wasted because we're measuring the wrong things and we're not far enough up the funnel?
Some of these methods of measuring campaigns, and I always blurb on about click-through because when you do really look into it, it's so obvious. It's much more than 50% being wasted. much more than 50% being wasted. And unless your target audience is teenage boys at home during the day, then you may start hitting the right target audience because that's where all the clicks are coming from. And yet you just have to, we've got these things like dwell time, click-through, and engaging with the ad and all these things. And your ad awareness will increase from those. They're being used as a proxy for something, or a proxy for what. And if you're using it for awareness or favourability or brand, which is quite often click-through where it is used, it does increase ad awareness. There's absolutely no doubt about that. You vaguely or subconsciously remember an ad that you click on. But you've got to look at who the target audience is. Is it the target audience that's engaging? And the reason why ad awareness increases, yes, people remember it, but quite often they're not interested in the product. So the brand awareness and attributes and favourability and purchasing don't increase at all. If you then optimise towards the right audience, the target audience who most likely that brand will appeal to, then ad awareness doesn't increase as much, but purchase intent starts to increase. And that's I think, one of the most important metrics. And so much more than 50% is being wasted in lots of instances.
I mean, obviously I've been plagued by that comment for years, but John Hegarty was saying to me yesterday, everybody knows what Rolls-Royce is and what they feel about it. Not everybody has one. So I'm much more in the camp that the original comment was nonsense. And it's fascinating. People, I think either it was Lever said it, I've seen it attributed to, or an American, I think it was Wanamaker or something. I've seen different attributions to it. I cannot believe, I've read Port Sunlight, which is a brilliant biography of the founder of Unilever. And that man understood creating desire beyond the people that were buying in the moment. He did. He understood the social role of companies and desire and goodwill beyond an individual consumer desire. He understood that very, very well. He was at the forefront of 6-day working weeks. He was at the forefront of creating environments for, etc. It was fascinating. But you look at the ideas he had, like using Pear soap. you know, and buying a picture at the Royal Academy is a way to do it. He used to like art, or his wife did, and he's got a brilliant gallery up in Port Sunlight. And so they used to go around the Royal Academy and buy that and buy that, buy that, buy that. Victorian kind of love that and a yard of that, please. And Millay apparently first he realised he was being used is when he saw it on the bus side. And he wrote a letter of complaint, and I think William Lever taught us that, and he wrote back publicly saying, well, I've got the copyright, so what you wrote, I bought it, you sold it, I bought it. It's very funny. But Pears soap, what is that? That is not the last click. That is some shaping of mind in some way, some feeling around bubbles and things, maybe hooked a little in a rational thing about lather or something, you know. But it's something else. It's a thought in our head, a feeling about something. So he understood, even though people didn't go out and buy it in the next 6 weeks or in the next nanosecond, he understood that was not a waste of money. He used posters, bus signs, railway trains. He used all the modern communication to create a total understanding of the feeling around his brand.
Is it?
Yeah.
So, just quickly, I was wondering, sort of, in your opinion and your experience, you've been talking about sort of short term and long term. Where should the decision to stick with long term come from? Should it come from client side, or should it come from agency side? Sort of, is it sort of a team effort here, or should someone be leading this? Because obviously, I work for an agency. To go to the client and say, okay, we need to take a step back, slow everything down. They're just going to be like, oh, how are you going to prove this is going to work? It's going to take 6 months. It's going to take 12 months. They have targets they need to meet as well. So where is this sort of sense where it's coming from?
It's got to come from clients. Everything comes from clients. You know, clients get what clients want. We're servants. It's very clear in the contract. It's a service business. I think our obligation is to explain. You know, sometimes I see that word and I think one of the failings of us or me over the years is long is a big word. What does it mean? What's the business tangible benefits of long? Because sure as hell I can see the business tangible benefit, and that of course, you know, so how to do that, I think I would define benefits of long. I'd break it up into what does that mean in business terms, in growth terms, and then I'd probably use some fairly good case histories that have by far and away proven the value of those things. And so I always immediately, you know, if you haven't read PG Tips as a case history in the IPA effectiveness, of course you can't argue with a client about long. You're just using content, whereas if you've got PG Tips and ask him to read it and then chat a bit about how does that apply to us, or Orange and the launch of Orange and how that applies to different stakeholders, what long means across different stakeholders, including city investment and cash and the cost of cash and things like that, you know, which is business benefit, by the way. Or if you haven't read a service case history, First Direct or a Bernardo's paper or something about service benefits, so input benefits, not consumer desire. You know, you can't argue the case, obviously. So read the cases, share it with the client and chat about it and say, does this apply? How do we talk about those things?
Can I give you an answer on that? I agree that obviously the client is creating the short-term pressure, but then if you go to the client will say, well, it's my boss, and it's my boss's boss, and actually it's the chief exec who's driving it. And you go to the chief exec, and the chief exec says, well, it's our shareholders. You know, they're demanding it. So everyone then exists within this world, which is, well, we defer responsibility, and we just have to because the system is making us. So, and I do get that the system is making us in some way, but I think there is also, my other answer is, it comes from you. It comes from, this is a more philosophical answer, not a practical one to go to your client with tomorrow, by the way, but it's, it's what do you think is right? And of course you've got to work on the short term and produce results, but also you've got to tune into what you believe is right in how you do it, which really is not short or long, it's a kind of a mixture of all of it. And I think it comes from within each one of us to say, well, what is the right thing to be doing in any moment on anything?
Okay.
Otherwise we just become part of the hamster wheel, we continue on it. Well, I can't help it.
Okay, we could discuss this for hours, quite frankly. I'm going to call time on that because Tom's telling me with time. Did you give out the questionnaire? So you should each have some questionnaires that we'd just like you to fill out to give us a steer about these things going forward. So thank you for coming. I'd like to thank Phil, Nick, and Martin, and we'll hopefully see you again at the next one.